Why did he laugh when he heard her voice? That question would linger in her mind long after the dust cleared, long after the echoes of gunfire faded into memory. The battlefield stretched endlessly under a blood-red Afghan sky, painted in fire by a setting sun that seemed almost complicit in the violence below. Dust clouds rolled across the valley, stirred up by incoming mortar rounds. Each blast shook the ground like an angry god slamming its fist. The SEAL team pressed against shattered concrete, pinned down by relentless sniper fire from 3 different angles. Master Chief Mason Adams squinted into the haze, his weathered face cut deep by years of desert suns and frozen mountains. 20 years in special operations had taught him to recognize when a situation was slipping out of control. This was one of those moments. His men were hunkered down, their rifles pressed to broken walls, their nerves stretched thin by the realization that they were trapped in a killing ground. "Eagle 3, this is actual," Mason growled into his radio, voice tight, urgent. "We need immediate fire support. Walker's hit. We're pinned." Static crackled in his headset, then a voice cut through, calm, measured, steady. A woman's voice. "Actual, this is Overwatch. Ready to provide support." Mason barked out a laugh sharp enough to draw side glances from his own men. It wasn't humor. It was contempt. "They sent the girl," he muttered. "We're fighting a war here, not running a damn shooting gallery." The SEALs exchanged quick glances. No one dared challenge him, not in that moment, not with death peering at them from every shadow. Still, the disdain was there, thick in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Then one rifle shot, just one. A thunderclap rolled across the valley. A Taliban commander crumpled 800 meters away, the back of his skull blooming red into the dust. Before anyone could fully register what had just happened, the radio came alive again. "Overwatch confirms first target eliminated," the woman's voice said, as calm as if she were reading a weather report. 20 targets remaining." Silence fell among the SEALs. Mason lifted his binoculars just in time to see another fighter collapse, cut down so cleanly he never even raised his weapon. A third man dropped before Mason lowered the lenses. His jaw tightened. Whoever she wasn't missing. "Who is this woman?" Lieutenant whispered. Mason didn't answer. He didn't need to. They were about to witness something none of them would forget. Hours earlier, far from the firefight, forward operating Base Alpha had hummed with its usual restless energy. Generators rattled. Dust blew across chain-link fences. Inside the command center, Mason had been hunched over satellite imagery, tracing routes with his finger. At 45, he carried the lean, coiled readiness of a man who had lived most of his life in the margins of war. His salt and pepper hair was cropped close, his face weathered into hard lines that spoke of years leading men into situations that chewed them alive. Colonel Richard entered, his presence filling the small room. 58, steel-gray eyes, a man whose authority came not from barked orders but from the weight of decades making impossible calls. "The intel on this Taliban cell is solid," said, sliding a folder onto the table. "We the operation for tomorrow night." Mason straightened. "My team's ready. We've rehearsed the plan 3 times. We'll hit them before they know we're coming." His gaze didn't waver, but his voice shifted, the subtle change that Mason had learned to dread. "There's one adjustment to your team composition." Mason frowned. Adjustments before operations rarely meant good news. "You're getting a new sniper for Overwatch. Lieutenant Mitchell, call sign Hawk. She arrived from this morning." Mason's jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect, Freeman's one of our best. Why switch snipers before a critical op?" "Because Freeman's appendix had other plans. He's being medevaced out. Mitchell comes highly recommended, top of her class at Scout Sniper School." The door swung open, and Mason turned. For a brief second, he thought someone had made a mistake. Standing there was a young woman, short, slight, her standard-issue combat uniform almost swallowing her frame. Her brown hair was pinned in a regulation bun. Her face looked like it belonged in a classroom, not on a battlefield. But it wasn't her face Mason noticed. It was what she carried. Across her back, slung with the casual ease of a soldier grabbing her pack, was a M82A1. 50 inches of steel, nearly 30 pounds of recoil-driven devastation. A weapon designed to break men, vehicles, walls, not to be carried by someone barely over 5'4". Yet she bore it like it weighed nothing. "Lieutenant Mitchell, reporting as ordered, sir." Her voice was crisp, professional, no hesitation. Nodded. "At ease, Lieutenant. This is Master Chief Adams. You'll be providing overwatch for his team tomorrow." Mason studied her openly, letting his skepticism show. There wasn't just a rifle. It was a monster. Its recoil could dislocate a shoulder. Its rounds could punch through light armor at distances over a mile. And here was this girl. "You qualified with that thing?" he asked, no effort to hide the disdain. A flicker passed across her face, annoyance, maybe before professionalism returned. "Yes, Master Chief. Expert rating, static and under stress conditions. Confirmed kills at 1,700 meters in multiple environments." Mason smirked. "Paper targets don't shoot back, Lieutenant." "No, sir. Taliban fighters in Helmand Province do. I served 2 tours with the Marines before this unit." Something about the way she said it caught him. Not defensive, not cocky, just fact. Still, it irritated him. He grunted. "We brief at 1800, don't be late." She saluted, turned, and left. Gave Mason a pointed look. "Give her a chance, Master Chief. There's more to her than meets the eye." Mason watched her retreating figure, the massive rifle balanced as though it were part of her body. He muttered under his breath, "That remains to be seen." In the quiet of her quarters, a converted storage room with a cot and little else, Mitchell, call sign Hawk, set thee on a maintenance mat. She handled it carefully, reverently, breaking it down with practiced precision. From her pack she pulled a leather-bound journal, edges worn, pages yellowed with age. Embossed initials on the cover, J.M. Her father's. Staff Sergeant James Mitchell, a Marine sniper whose life ended under a flag-draped coffin after an IED tore his convoy apart. Inside the journal, ballistics tables, wind adjustments, notes on bullet drop, weather patterns, the accumulated wisdom of 3 tours in Afghanistan. She traced her fingers over his handwriting, then slid the journal aside and reached beneath her bunk. From a hard case, she a rifle unlike the sleeker, lighter, her mother. Colonel Mitchell, the most decorated female sniper in Marine history. 20 confirmed kills in a single operation, a record never broken, until maybe tonight. Her parents had taught her differently. Her father drilled her in patience, angles, mathematics. Her mother in silence, resilience, and the psychological edge of killing at distance. By the time she was 12, she could hit steel at 500 yards. By 16, she could calculate wind, humidity, even the Earth's rotation in her head. "A sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle," her mother had once said. "It's the mind that controls the trigger finger." Now both were gone, and Hawk carried their legacy alone. She reassembled each component sliding home with a satisfying click. She didn't need to prove herself. Not really. Her record already did that. But deep inside, a whisper pushed her forward. Her mother's record, 20 confirmed kills. It had haunted her since childhood. Tonight might be her chance to put the ghost to rest. As she made her final notes in the leather journal, she could still hear Mason's voice in her head. The laugh, the dismissal. "They sent the girl." She smiled faintly, sliding around into the chamber and setting the rifle aside. Tomorrow, she thought, they'd see. Some talents transcended appearances. Some skills expectation. And some legends began with a single perfect shot. Why was everyone staring at her rifle? The afternoon sun beat down on the forward operating base. the heat shimmering off the gravel range as the SEAL team gathered for mission prep. Normally, this was routine. Gear checks, rehearsals, last-minute jokes to ease the tension. But today, something different hung in the air. The lieutenant, the girl with the, had become the unspoken center of attention. Hawk Mitchell laid out her equipment in deliberate order: range finder, wind meter, ballistic calculator, ammunition neatly stacked in rows. Every movement was precise, practiced. She worked in silence as though the others weren't even there. Petty Officer Wilson muttered just loud enough for Chuckles. "That thing's almost as big as she is." Snickers followed. A few of the guys shook their heads. Mason didn't laugh, but he didn't stop it either. Let her take it, he thought. If she can't handle hazing, she won't handle combat. He raised his voice. "And lady, focus on the mission." The murmurs died, but the smirks lingered. Mitchell ignored them, her attention locked on the map. She marked key coordinates, scribbled angles, ran firing solutions under her breath. If the mockery stung, she didn't show it. Mason briefed, his voice steady, practiced. "Target is a high-value Taliban commander operating near the border. Intel suggests he's coordinating a new offensive. Lieutenant Mitchell will provide overwatch from Ridge Point Alpha." He tapped the map. A rocky outcrop overlooking the target village, perfect for a sniper's nest. "The rest of us approach from the east. Quiet insertion, grab the HVT, extract before sunrise." "Questions?" Senior Chief raised a hand. 34 medic, 3 Purple Hearts, the team's calm center. "Weather." "Clear skies, temps around 40 overnight. Winds northwest 8 to 10 knots." Mason turned his gaze on Mitchell, sharp as a blade. "Think you can compensate for that crosswind, Lieutenant?" Her answer came quick, flat, without hesitation. "Yes, Master Chief, I've operated in worse." The calm in her voice irritated him. Maybe it reminded him of someone, a ghost. He couldn't place it. "We move at 1900. Gear check in 1 hour." The team dispersed, but Mason gestured for Mitchell to stay. She stood at attention, across her back like a shadow. He let the silence stretch before speaking. "I don't know what strings you pulled to get here, but understand this. If you compromise my team's safety because you can't handle that cannon, you'll be on the first flight back to clear." Her eyes met his, steady, unflinching. "Perfectly clear, Master Chief. But with respect, I don't pull strings, I pull triggers, and I do it better than most." There it was again, that tone, that cadence. Something in it nagged at him like a half-remembered dream. "We'll see," he muttered. As she turned to leave, he called after her. "Why do they call you Hawk?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Because hawks don't miss, Master Chief, not when it matters." The range crackled with tension later that afternoon. It was standard protocol. Snipers confirmed their zero before deployment. But for Mitchell, it was more than routine. It was a test. She lay prone, braced on its bipod. The weapon looked absurd against her frame, but she moved with easy familiarity. A spotter, Williams, skeptical but curious, called out the setup. Range 1,200 meters, wind northwest 9 knots, target silhouette. Mason stood back, arms crossed, expression hard. Other SEALs lingered too, pretending to check gear but clearly waiting to watch the show. 1,200 meters, 3/4 of a mile. At that range, the bullet would drop 14 feet, take almost a second and a half to reach its mark. "Ready when you are, Lieutenant," Williams said, expecting a long setup. "Sending." The thundered, the recoil absorbed as if she'd been born with the rifle. Mason's binoculars showed the target's center disintegrate. "Hit, center mass," Williams confirmed, surprise cracking through his voice. Mitchell didn't pause. Bolt, breath, trigger. Again the rifle roared, another perfect hit. For 5 minutes she fired, adjusting wind, shifting aim, breaking the target apart piece by piece. 10 shots, 10 hits, each no more than 2 inches from perfect. Silence fell when she ejected the last smoking casing. "That's some shooting," Williams said, voice edged with respect. She nodded, expression neutral, already packing her gear. Mason's face remained stone, but inside his certainty shifted. She knew her weapon, no question, but combat wasn't steel silhouettes. Out there the targets shot back. "Not bad," he admitted grudgingly, "but this is a controlled range. Out there's different." Mitchell paused, lifted her gaze to his. "With respect, Master Chief, I'm aware of the difference. I've made 37 confirmed kills. 12 were counter-sniper ops." The words landed like a punch. 37. If true, she was already among the most lethal snipers alive. "That's not in your file." "Marine Operations, classified." Mason stared, and then it hit him, that cadence, that name, Mitchell. Mitchell. The finest sniper he'd ever worked with. The woman who had saved his life in Iraq before dying in the firestorm that followed. She made 20 confirmed kills on her final mission. Her legend had haunted special operations for 15 years. This girl, this lieutenant, couldn't be her daughter, could she? Before he could speak, appeared. "Master Chief, Colonel wants you, urgent." Mason nodded, eyes still on Mitchell as she packed her rifle. "Wheels up in 3 hours, don't be late." As he walked away, unease churned in his gut. If Mitchell was daughter, this mission wasn't just complicated, it was cursed. His office smelled of stale coffee and map ink. Mason stood at attention, tension sharp in his shoulders. "You wanted to see me, sir." Slid a folder across the desk. "Updated intel. Our target isn't alone, he's doubled security, and he's brought in a specialist." A grainy photo stared up at Mason, a bearded man with a rifle. "Al," said, "former Syrian army sniper, Taliban affiliated now. 6 coalition operators dead in the last 4 months. He hunts Overwatch." Mason's jaw clenched, a counter-sniper. "That's why I requested," Lieutenant Mitchell continued. "This isn't just about having a sniper, it's about having the right sniper." Mason hesitated, then asked quietly, "Does she know who I am?" His gaze held steady. "No, she does. His death was classified, the official report never named team members." The name lingered like smoke. Mitchell, the ghost he'd never escaped. "One more thing," added. "According to her file, Lieutenant Mitchell has been working toward breaking her mother's record. 20 confirmed kills in a single operation." Mason's throat tightened. That record came at too high a price. Maybe, but sometimes one exceptional shooter means the difference between survival and failure. Mason left the office heavy with ghosts. The past was circling back, wearing a new face, and he couldn't shake the fear that history was about to repeat. Night. The US-60 Black Hawk sliced through the Afghan sky, rotors muffled by suppression tech. Inside, the SEALs sat in silence, weapons cradled, eyes hard. Mitchell sat at the tail ramp in its padded case beside her. Her face was painted dark, her features erased, replaced by the mask of war. 5 minutes, the pilot called. Mason ran comms check. Each man responded, then Mitchell, Overwatch ready, calm, steady. He crouched beside her. "Listen carefully, Lieutenant. Opposition includes a counter-sniper. 6 confirmed kills. If you detect him, report it. Do not engage without authorization. Your primary mission is protecting the team. Understood?" Her dark eyes met his. "With respect, Master Chief, counter-sniper ops are my specialty. If he's out there, I'll find him before he finds you." The confidence wasn't bravado. It was fact. And it chilled Mason because it echoed her mother's voice 15 years ago. "Just stay alive," he said. "That's an order." The helicopter touched down, skids kissing dirt, then lifted away. The team moved like shadows into the night. Mitchell broke off, heading toward her ridge line, case on her back, vanishing into the dark. Mason watched her go, unease gnawing. "She'll be fine, boss," murmured. "Size doesn't matter with her kind of skill." Mason grunted, "Move out." But as he led his men into the Black Mountains, a silent prayer crossed his mind. Keep her safe, don't let history repeat. The hunt had begun. Why did the mountain feel alive? Hawk Mitchell pressed into the slope, each movement deliberate, careful, slow. Years of training had taught her that survival was measured in silence, in the ability to move as though you didn't exist. Even the smallest stone, if shifted, could betray her to a listening ear. The road across her back, heavy to anyone else, familiar to her. The rifle was part of her body now, an extension of her breath, her heartbeat, her will. She reached the ridge line and paused, scanning with practiced eyes. The position was good, high ground, clear lines of fire across the valley, a commanding view of the village below where the Taliban commander was believed to be hiding. More importantly, the ridge offered escape routes. She noted 3 immediately. With the precision of ritual, she unpacked. First, then the spotting scope, range finder, wind meter. Her father's leather journal, its pages filled with notes that had once been his and were now hers. She laid them all out in ordered rows like soldiers on parade. Through her night optics, the village stirred with faint signs of life. Mud brick houses clustered close, patrols drifting along the perimeter, shadows moving behind shuttered windows. Men with rifles, civilians too. She cataloged each, mapping patterns in her mind. "Overwatch in position," she murmured into her radio. "I have visual on the compound. 14 armed personnel on perimeter patrol. No sign of HVT." "Copy," Mason's voice answered, steady but clipped. "Team approaching from the east. ETA 20 minutes." She adjusted her scope, sweeping the ridges opposite her. Somewhere out there, if the intel was right, another sniper waited. A hunter like her. A man who had killed 6 coalition operators by watching and waiting for the faintest mistake. Her mother's words returned like whispers. "The most dangerous prey is the man running toward you. It's the one watching from the dark, thinking the same thoughts you are." A shadow on a distant ridge caught her eye. At first nothing. But then, so subtle it was almost imagined, the pattern shifted against the wind. Not natural, not random. Her pulse slowed. Her world narrowed to the faint irregularity 800 meters west. "Actual, this is Overwatch," she whispered. "Possible counter-sniper. Western Ridge, 800 meters from my position." "Negative," Mason's voice came back. "No confirmation from our side." "I can't confirm without exposing my position. But he's there. Adjust your approach 3 degrees north. That'll keep you in his blind spot." Silence stretched, then Mason's voice again. "Copy, adjusting course." She lowered her breathing, focused again on the shadows. Somewhere out there, another sniper adjusted his rifle, searching for her, waiting to catch her in the glass of his scope. She whispered into the night, "You won't find me." Mason led his team through the blackness, his senses sharpened by Mitchell's warning. The new path was harder, rockier, longer, but safer. He trusted his instincts, but he also knew when to trust another's. They moved in silence, hand signals replacing words, each man scanning, weapons ready. The mission had shifted the moment she called out the sniper, and Mason couldn't shake the thought. If she was right, they were already in a deadly game of patience with someone trained to think just like her. The compound loomed ahead. Through his NVGs, Mason saw the walls, the guards, the glow of cigarettes in the dark. He signaled a halt, raising binoculars for closer study. 18 armed men, not 10. Intel had undercounted again. "Overwatch, this is actual," he whispered. "What's your assessment?" 18 visible, Mitchell confirmed without pause. 4 north wall, 5 south, 3 east, 2 west, 4 in the courtyard, 2 at the entrance. They haven't moved since I arrived, likely guarding the HVT. Her precision impressed him. She missed nothing. "Any sign of our sniper friend?" "Negative, position remains unconfirmed. Monitoring." Mason's jaw tightened. The longer they stayed, the more dangerous it became, but the mission was the mission. Proceeding as planned, he divided the team, 2 east, 2 west, the rest with him at the main building. They moved like shadows, hugging walls, weapons raised. Then Mitchell's voice again, sharper now. Actual hold, new activity, southern approach, vehicle incoming, 6 fighters mounted gun. Through his scope, Mason saw the dust cloud rising, the headlights bouncing across the dirt road. Reinforcements. Wasn't in the intel, he muttered. Permission to engage, Mitchell said. Mason hesitated. A rifle shot would give them away, but letting the vehicle reach the compound would turn the odds from dangerous to impossible. Do it, disable only. Copy, engaging in 3, 2, 1. The roared, sparks erupted from the engine block. The truck veered, flipped, rolled in a crash of metal and dust. Fighters tumbled, disoriented but alive. Vehicle disabled, 6 targets down, mobile. But the crash and the thunder of her rifle were enough. Shouts echoed through the compound. Guards scrambled, weapons raised. Our cover blown, Mason growled. Change of plans, full breach, immediate action, HVT is priority, move. Chaos erupted. The SEALs surged, breaching walls with explosives, moving in 3 coordinated waves. Suppressed fire cracked through the night as enemies fell before they understood what was happening. Mason and his men cut through the compound, clearing rooms, neutralizing resistance. Overwatch sitrep, Mason barked into his radio. 4 targets mobile from the crash, 2 down, Mitchell replied. Even through the storm, her voice was steady. Remaining fighters moving toward the compound. ETA 40 seconds. Keep them off us. This cadence rolled across the valley, 1 shot, then another, each precisely timed, exactly spaced as if she were playing an instrument. Roof movement, she reported, 2 fighters setting up heavy machine gun. Before Mason could respond, 2 thunderclaps silenced the threat. Targets eliminated. Watch your 3 o'clock, Master Chief, 2 incoming. Mason spun, firing just as 2 figures broke from the shadows. Both dropped, dead before they hit the ground. Courtyard temporarily clear, Mitchell's voice said. Her overwatch was surgical, unflinching, every warning precise, every shot perfectly placed. Mason felt his skepticism, eroding with every passing second. Doc Wilson, he ordered, main building now. They stormed inside, clearing hallways, bodies slumping in their wake. Then Wilson shouted, "Got him." In a back room, a middle-aged man in traditional dress fumbled with burning papers, trying to destroy intel. Their HVT. Hands up, Mason barked. The man froze, eyes wide. His guards lay dead on the floor. They had him. But victory lasted seconds. Gunfire raked the compound from outside. This is Overwatch, Mitchell cut in, her voice harder now. 8 hostiles converging on the main building, multiple directions. I don't have angles on all. Copy, Mason snapped. Wilson, secure the HVT. Davis, rear cover, we're moving. The walls rattled with impacts as Taliban fighters pressed their counterattack. Shouts, gunfire, smoke, chaos. Through the storm, Mason heard Mitchell again. 11 confirmed kills since commencement, 4 at the vehicle, 2 roof, 5 external approaches. 11 kills in less than 10 minutes. The number rattled in Mason's head. They regrouped at the main building, prisoner in tow, the team battered but intact. Mason keyed his mic. Overwatch we need, what's our route? South and east are hot. Northwest corner minimal activity. Clear path to extraction point from there. I'll cover your movement. Copy, moving on your mark. Stand by, she said, then her tone changed. Actual be advised, counter-sniper confirmed. Western Ridge, natural cave, adjusting to target your route. Mason froze. A skilled sniper could devastate them during withdrawal, especially while burdened with a prisoner. Can you neutralize? He asked. Extreme angle, 1,100 meters, significant elevation, wind unstable. I'll need to relocate for a clean shot. Negative, Mason snapped. Maintain overwatch. With respect, Master Chief, if he establishes, he'll cut down your entire team. I need to take him out now. Mason clenched his jaw. Doctrine was clear. Overwatch stayed with the team, but her logic was sound. If she was right, every man here was already living on borrowed time. You're certain? Yes, no hesitation, just certainty. He exhaled. Do it, but fast. We move in 3 minutes with or without you. Copy, engaging now. Mitchell shifted into a crouch, moving like a shadow along the ridge. She had seconds before the other sniper settled, seconds before the balance tipped. The cave was dark, but not dark enough. A faint glint, glass or steel, that was all she needed. She slowed her breathing. 4 in, hold 2, 7 out, heart rate dropping. The world narrowed to the glint, the wind, the numbers in her head. She squeezed. The roared. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the tumbled from the cave mouth, followed by a body rolling limp down the rocks. Actual sniper neutralized, she reported, already shifting back to her primary nest. Returning focus to your. Mason's reply came, a note of respect threaded into his voice. Copy that, Overwatch, we're moving. Her rifle thundered again, covering their retreat. One by one, fighters fell as she carved their path clear. Her world became rhythm. Acquire, breathe, press, confirm. Tango, 11 o'clock. Vehicle approaching east. 2 with RPGs, 300 meters. Each shot, each life ended. Her tally climbed, 12, 13, 14, then 15. And still they came. Then she saw them, 10 fighters circling from a neighboring village, racing to cut off the SEAL's escape. Actual, she said, large force approaching point, 10 fighters, RPGs and machine guns, ETA 2 minutes. Mason's voice crackled, can you delay? Affirmative. Her first shot dropped the leader, the group faltering in confusion. The second destroyed the heavy machine gun. The third silenced an RPG. But they adapted, spreading out, advancing. Her rate of fire quickened. 16, 17, 18. The barrel glowed hot, the rifle kicking against her shoulder with each thunderous roar. 19 confirmed, she called. The helicopter thundered closer. Time was running out. Then she saw it, an RPG carrier breaking into position, launcher on his shoulder, aimed at the incoming bird. The shot would be almost impossible. Extreme range, gusting wind, barrel near thermal limits. She steadied her breath. Everything you are is this moment. The cracked. The fighter collapsed. The launcher fired harmlessly into dirt. 21 confirmed, she whispered. One more than her mother. LZ clear, she reported, voice flat, controlled, betraying nothing of the history she had just rewritten. The SEALs boarded the Hello, prisoner secured. Mitchell packed fast, slinging the across her back, her muscles burning. She was still in enemy country, still hunted, but she had done what she came to do. 21. A new record. A ghost reborn. Why didn't anyone speak on the flight back? The helicopter's cabin was filled with the heavy thrum of rotors, but beneath that silence, not the silence of discipline or fatigue, but something else, something unspoken. The SEALs sat in their crash seats, weapons still across their laps, their prisoner blindfolded and zip-tied on the floor. But no one looked at him. No one looked at each other. Their eyes, when they did rise, flicked only toward the tail of the bird, where Hawk Mitchell sat alone, across her knees, her face unreadable under streaks of camo paint. She had covered their withdrawal. She had neutralized the sniper that could have wiped them out. And she had racked up 21 confirmed kills in one night, a number none of them could ignore. Yet not a word of praise was spoken. Mason stared at her across the cabin. His men weren't fools. They knew skill when they saw it. but they were also human. To admit admiration for her meant admitting they had doubted her, and some wounds ran deeper than bullets. Mitchell didn't seem to notice, or maybe she did, and refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing it. She sat with her head lowered, hands resting calmly on the steel of her rifle, as if its weight grounded her in ways nothing else could. The flight dragged on, every mile stretched by silence. Finally, Mason leaned forward, keyed the intercom. "We're inbound to base. Secure gear and prepare for immediate debrief." A chorus of clipped acknowledgments followed. Still, no one addressed her. The debrief room glowed harsh with fluorescent light. Colonel presided at the head of the table, expression carved from stone, his eyes tracking each man and woman as they filed in. The HVT had already been escorted away, destined for a black site where his usefulness would be measured in what he could be made to reveal. "Wasted no time. Report." Mason delivered it flatly, professionally. "Objectives met, target captured, casualties none, enemy neutralized 30+, enemy sniper eliminated." His eyes flicked to Mitchell. "An Overwatch performance." For the briefest moment Mason hesitated, then he answered, "Effective." It was the closest thing to praise he'd given her yet. His attention shifted. "Lieutenant Mitchell, your own assessment." She sat, voice level. "Mission objectives achieved. Enemy resistance exceeded initial intel. Counter-sniper neutralized. Overwatch confirmed 21 kills. Team successfully extracted." The room shifted at those words. The SEALs stiffened, glancing at each other. The number hung in the air like a ghost. "Didn't blink. 21 confirmed." "Yes, sir." His eyes softened barely. A flicker of something old, something familiar. Mason recognized it. Memory. "Dismissed," said all of you except you, Lieutenant. The SEALs filed out. Mitchell remained. When the door closed, his voice dropped. "Do you know what that number means?" Her hands clenched against her knees, but her voice stayed calm. "Yes, sir. My mother's record was 20. Silence stretched between them, then spoke. "I was there the day she said it. I watched Mitchell hold a ridge alone so the rest of us could escape. I watched her stay behind when the order came to withdraw, and I watched the sky burn when the mortars came down." Swallowed, her throat felt tight, her chest heavier than they ever had. "They told me she died with honor." His gaze held hers. "She did, but honor isn't the same as peace, not for those left behind." The words hit her harder than she wanted to admit. She lowered her eyes, pressing her palms against her thighs to steady herself. "Sir," she said softly, "I didn't set out to break her record, but when the last shot landed and I counted the number, I realized I had, and I don't know what I feel about it." Leaned back, the weight of years heavy in his shoulders. "Feel proud, feel haunted, maybe both. Records mean little compared to the lives they save. Your mother understood that even if she never had time to tell you." Nodded faintly, but in her heart the words rang hollow. She had carried her parents' ghosts for so long, and tonight she had awakened them. The days that followed blurred into routine. Patrols, reports, the endless churn of a war that never seemed to end. Yet for Mitchell, something had shifted. Where once there had been skepticism, now there was silence. The men didn't mock her anymore, but they didn't embrace her either. She existed in the in-between, respected perhaps, but not trusted. Not yet. Wilson offered her a ration pack one evening, unprompted. Checked in on her rifle maintenance without comment. Small gestures, nothing more. But Mason remained distant, watching, measuring, as if trying to decide whether she was an asset or a liability wrapped in skill. Late one night, unable to sleep, Mitchell sat alone in the armory, cleaning the under-dim light. The clatter of metal parts echoed softly. Her father's journal lay open beside her, his looping handwriting a tether to another life. She whispered to the empty room, "I did it, Dad. I broke her record, but why doesn't it feel like victory?" The silence gave no answer. only the metallic click of a bolt sliding home. Mason found her there. He didn't announce himself, just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her work. Finally he spoke, "You shoot like her." Mitchell froze. Slowly she looked up. "You knew my mother." It wasn't a question. It was recognition, dawning slow but certain. Mason's jaw tightened. "We served together, Iraq." She studied his face, searching for the truth written in his scars, his lines, his weary eyes. "You were there, the day she died." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Her voice cracked despite herself. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because some ghosts are easier left buried," Mason said quietly. Anger flared in her chest, hot and sharp. "You let me walk in here with her name, her rifle, her shadow, and you said nothing." His eyes hardened. "Because this isn't about her or me, it's about you. I needed to know if you could stand on your own, not as daughter, as." Her hands tightened on the rifle. "And did I pass your test?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "You did." The words should have felt like vindication. Instead, they only deepened the ache inside her. "She died alone, didn't she?" whispered. Mason's silence was answer enough. Tears threatened, but she forced them back, blinking hard. "Then I won't, not like her." She slammed the rifle case shut and stood, her small frame rigid with fire. "If you want to know who I am, Master Chief, don't compare me to her. Watch me, and you'll see." She walked past him, her boots echoing against the floor, leaving him alone with his ghosts. The next mission came sooner than anyone expected. Intel suggested the Taliban were regrouping after capture, rallying under a new leader, and planning an ambush on a U.S. convoy route. This time Mitchell was added to the team. She was on the roster from the start. Overwatch wasn't a question anymore. It was expected. Still, as they geared up, Mason pulled her aside. "This one will be different. They know we're coming, and they'll be hunting you first." Her eyes didn't waver. "Let them." His gaze lingered. The girl he had once dismissed was gone. In her place stood something sharper, harder, forged by ghosts and fire. As the rotors of the helicopter began to turn, Mason wondered if he was witnessing the birth of a legend, or the beginning of another tragedy. And for the first time in years, he didn't know which would hurt more. Why did the road look so empty? Convoys rarely moved without attracting eyes. In Afghanistan, even the dust rising from Humvee tires could draw an audience of villagers, traders, children. But tonight, the road stretched bare, silent beneath a pale moon. Too empty, too quiet. Hawk Mitchell lay prone on a rocky ledge overlooking the route. Through her scope, she scanned the opposite, every shadow suspicious, every rock a possible rifle nest. The rested steady against her shoulder, its weight comforting, grounding. She had learned to trust silence, but not this kind. "Overwatch in position," she whispered into comms. "No visual movement, no civilians, no animals, nothing." "Copy," Mason's voice replied. He was in the lead vehicle of the convoy, eyes locked on the road. "Stay sharp. Too quiet usually means too loud later." His words lingered like prophecy. The convoy rolled forward. 4 Humvees, a supply truck, 2 MRAPs. Standard formation, but this time, everyone knew they were bait. Intel said Taliban fighters were preparing an ambush here, and Mason's team had volunteered to spring the trap before the enemy could. Mitchell's scope swept left to right. Still no movement, no flicker of steel, no muzzle glint. Her father's journal lay open beside her, the notes etched in familiar ink. "If the battlefield feels wrong, trust the feeling. Patterns break before danger strikes." She inhaled slowly, her finger resting near the trigger. The ridge looked empty, but it was. She felt it. "Actual," she murmured, "something off. No locals anywhere near this road, that's never normal." "Copy, Overwatch," acknowledged. "Everyone tighten up," Mason ordered. The convoy slowed, tension thick. And then the world exploded. The first IED ripped the road apart in a geyser of fire and dirt, flipping the supply truck onto its side. Flames engulfed the cab. Shouts filled comms. Chaos. Ambush, contact left, contact right. From both ridges, Taliban fighters erupted, rifles flashing, RPGs streaking into the night. Bullets rained down, sparking against armored hulls. Mitchell was already firing. The cracked, one shot dropping an RPG gunner before he could fire. Another, and a machine gun nest went silent. Overwatch engaging, she reported, calm despite the storm. 3 down. Mason barked orders inside the convoy. Dismount, form perimeter, suppress left flank. His men spilled out, returning fire, ducking behind burning vehicles. Overwatch, priority targets are RPGs and heavy guns, he called. Copy. The thunder rolled again. Each shot was deliberate, each breath measured. Fighters dropped one by one, shoulders snapped back, heads whipped sideways, chests burst open. Still, there were too many. Overwatch, they're pushing your ridge. His voice cut through the radio. Mitchell shifted her scope. Figures scrambled upward, climbing toward her position. She had known this would come. They'd learned from last time, kill the sniper, kill the shield. She fired twice more, thinning the group, then slung the and pulled her sidearm. Close quarters was never her preference, but tonight it might be survival. The first fighter crested the ridge, shouting. She shot him clean through the chest. Another scrambled up, swinging an AK. She ducked, fired again, and he tumbled backward into the dark. Still more were climbing. Her breath came hard, not from fear but from focus. Her mind ran the numbers, distance, timing, ammunition. She couldn't hold them off forever. She keyed her mic. Actual ridge compromised. They're coming for me. Hold your ground, Lieutenant, Mason ordered, voice sharp. We're pushing to you. No time, she answered. Her eyes flicked to the lying across its bipod. It was her anchor, her legacy, her voice in this war. She wouldn't abandon it. With one hand, she fired her pistol. With the other, she dragged the back into line, bracing it against her shoulder even as the enemy crested higher. The first man's head vanished under her round. Then another. Then another. Each shot echoed like thunder across the valley, drowning the roar of rifles, the scream of rockets, the cries of men dying. The ridge grew slick beneath her elbows. She didn't stop to think if it was dust, sweat, or blood. She didn't stop at all. Below, Mason fought to push his men through the kill zone. Every yard was bought with bullets, every advance met with fire. He'd been in dozens of firefights, but tonight felt different, harder. He could hear Mitchell's rifle above, the sound of it cutting gaps in the chaos. But he could also hear the growing press of fighters around her. Wilson, with me, he barked, cutting toward the slope. We've got to get her out. As they scrambled upward, a voice crackled in his ear, steady, calm, almost eerie in its composure. Actual, this is Overwatch. 18 confirmed. Ridge still contested. He paused only long enough to return fire before replying. You're not dying on that hill, Lieutenant. That's an order. Her laugh, faint, humorless, drifted across the net. Not planning to, Master Chief, just keeping them off your backs. Then the roared again, and another fighter fell. Minutes blurred into eternity. Mitchell's shoulders ached, her arms heavy, her ears ringing from the relentless thunder of her rifle. Her kill count ticked upward like a drumbeat she couldn't stop. 19, 20, 23. But then silence. This bolt slammed forward on an empty chamber. Her last magazine was dry. She reached for her pistol, heart pounding. 2 fighters were already within 20 feet. She shot one, ducked a wild swing from the other, and drove her shoulder into his chest, sending him sprawling over the ledge. Then another appeared, and another. Her breath came ragged. For the first time tonight, doubt crept in. She was out of time, out of ammo, and alone. Until she heard it, Mason's voice. On your left. Gunfire ripped past her, cutting down the fighters at her flank. Mason crested the ridge and Wilson at his back, rifles spitting flame. For a heartbeat, relief surged through her. Then training reclaimed her body. She grabbed her, slamming a fresh mag tossed her way, chambered around and swung back into the fight. Together they pushed the ridge clear. Bodies tumbled down the rocks, the last of the fighters scattering into the night. The silence afterward was deafening. Mitchell lay back, chest heaving, rifle across her chest. Mason stood over her, scanning the valley, his face grim beneath the glow of tracers fatting in the distance. "You're insane," he muttered. She turned her head, sweat streaking her face, eyes steady despite exhaustion. "You told me to hold my ground." His gaze met hers, hard but unwillingly admiring. "And you did." By dawn, the battlefield was silent again. Smoke curled from blackened vehicles, the road littered with spent brass and bodies. The convoy survivors regrouped, battered but alive. Casualties had been avoided by inches, by seconds by her. The official tally, once confirmed, spread through the unit like wildfire. 27 confirmed kills, one night. It wasn't supposed to matter. She told herself it didn't matter. But deep down, she knew the number would follow her. It wasn't just a record anymore. It was a question. How many before the weight of them crushed her? That night, as she sat alone in her quarters, wiping blood and dust from her rifle, she thought of her mother again. Mitchell had carried her own number. 20 in one operation. Enough to live forever as a legend, and yet never enough to come home alive. Whispered to the silence, "I won't end like you." But even as she said it, she wondered if destiny cared about promises. And somewhere deep inside, she feared the mountain hadn't finished with her yet. Why did the metal feel so heavy in her hand? The briefing hall was filled with quiet applause, restrained and formal, the kind of clapping soldiers gave when told to celebrate in the middle of a war. Hawk Mitchell stood at attention, her uniform crisp, dust scrubbed from her boots, the left back in the armory. Colonel pinned the commendation to her chest, a bronze star gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. "For extraordinary valor during engagement en route Sabre," read, his voice carrying. "For decisive action under fire, ensuring the survival of convoy personnel, and neutralizing hostile threats beyond the call of duty." Applause again, louder this time. Mitchell saluted, "Thank you, sir." But when the ceremony ended, when the men filed out, when the hall emptied, she stared at the medal in her palm and felt nothing. It weighed almost nothing, yet it felt like stone pressing her chest. 27 confirmed kills, a bronze star, recognition, validation. And yet, her mother's face flickered in her mind, not smiling, not proud, just silent as if asking, "And what did you pay for it?" That night she lay awake in her quarters. Sleep wouldn't come. The sounds of the base, the generators humming, the occasional laughter drifting from the mess, the whir of helicopters overhead pressed against her ears like static. She opened her father's journal, tracing a finger down the margin of a weather-worn page. "Killing solves the mission. Living with it solves the soul. Don't forget the second." Her throat tightened. He had written that years before he died. Had he struggled with it too? Did he lie awake like this, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much of himself was left after each trigger pull? She closed the book, pressing it to her chest. The medal lay on the table beside her, gleaming in the dim light. She turned it face down. Elsewhere on base, Mason sat alone in the command tent, whiskey untouched beside a stack of after-action reports. His eyes kept drifting back to one line, over and over. Overwatch performance decisive. Lieutenant Mitchell neutralized 27 hostiles. He should have been proud, he should have been relieved, but instead unease gnawed at him. Because he remembered Mitchell's last mission. 20 kills, a record, a legend, and then gone. But she carried her shadow, and Mason had lived long enough to know that shadows were dangerous things. entered quietly, medic's hand still stained faintly with iodine. "You're not drinking." Mason shook his head. "Not tonight." "You should. We lived through hell out there. We earned it." Mason grunted. "She earned it more." Studied him, then sat across the table. "You don't trust her." "I trust her skill," Mason admitted. "But skill's not the same as survival. Records don't save you when the war decides it's your turn." "Lean back, maybe. But I've watched men fall apart after 3 kills, and I've watched her carry 27 without blinking. She's wired different." Mason's jaw tightened. "That's what I'm afraid of." Days passed, missions blurred. Mitchell kept to herself, training, recalibrating, always near her rifle. The men had stopped mocking her. Now they gave her space, respect in silence. One evening, Wilson found her at the range, firing in near darkness, every round a precise crack through the air. "You're going to wear out the barrel," he joked, trying for lightness. She lowered the rifle, sweat streaking her temples. "Barrels can be replaced." He hesitated, then asked, "How do you do it? Stay so calm after all that?" Her eyes lingered on him, searching, then softened. "I'm not calm, Wilson, I just don't show it." She packed her gear and left before he could respond. The next operation came with little warning. A drone strike had crippled a Taliban weapons convoy, but survivors had scattered into a mountain village. Intel suggested they were regrouping, planning retaliation. Orders were simple: locate, identify, eliminate leadership before they could vanish again. But as Mason studied the map, unease churned in his gut. The village wasn't just fighters. Civilians lived there too, families, children. Collateral damage was inevitable. When he briefed the team, his voice was flat. "Rules of engagement are clear. Confirm targets before firing. We're not here to kill villagers." Mitchell's gaze met his across the table. No words, just the faintest nod. That night she took position on a ridge above the village, her scope sweeping over rooftops, alleys, courtyards. Lantern light flickered. A woman drew water from a well. Children chased a stray goat through narrow streets. And in the shadows, armed men moved, slipping between houses, blending into the lives around them. Her crosshairs hovered over one fighter. She could end him with a breath. But behind him, through a doorway, a child watched, wide-eyed. She exhaled, finger easing away from the trigger. "Overwatch, what do you see?" Mason's voice crackled. "Multiple hostiles embedded with civilians," she answered softly. "No clean shots." Silence. Then Mason replied, "Copy. Hold fire until you've got them isolated." She lowered her eye from the scope, her pulse steady but her chest heavy. For the first time, the rifle felt less like a shield and more like a burden. The firefight came anyway. The SEALs breached under cover of night, forcing hostiles into the open. Mitchell provided support, but her shots were rarer now, more measured. Every trigger pull weighed against the chance of collateral. She killed when she had to, but she spared when she could. The battle stretched long, messy, chaotic. In the end, the Taliban cell was shattered, their leaders dead. The village survived, but at a cost. Walls shattered, doors splintered, families huddled in fear. As the team exfiltrated, Mitchell lingered on the ridge, her scope sweeping one last time. A girl stood in the street below, clutching her mother's hand, staring up into the night, staring at her. Mitchell lowered the rifle. She whispered into the dark, though no one could hear, "I'm not your enemy." But she wasn't sure she believed it. Back at base, Mason found her alone again, the across her lap. He approached quietly, then spoke. "You held back." She didn't look up. "There were children." He nodded. "You made the right call." Her voice cracked. "So why doesn't it feel like it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat beside her, his hands folded, his gaze distant. "Because killing never feels right. Not if you're human. The day it does, you've lost more than you know." Her throat tightened. "Did my mother ever feel it?" Mason's eyes softened. Every time, she just never let it stop her from saving the rest of us. Silence lingered between them, heavy but shared. Finally, Mitchell whispered, "I don't want to be a legend. I just want to be someone who made it out." Mason studied her, the young woman carrying so much weight on her small shoulders, and felt a truth he hadn't in years. Maybe she wasn't her mother's shadow. Maybe she was her own light, fragile but burning against the dark. He stood, his voice steady. "Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow's another fight." As he left, Mitchell looked down at her rifle, her father's journal, the medal still face down on the table. And for the first time, she wondered if survival would mean more than numbers, more than records, more than ghosts. Because deep inside, she feared the war wasn't testing her skill anymore. It was testing her soul. Why did the valley feel like a trap before they even stepped into it? The map called it canyon, a stretch of barren rock carved by centuries of wind and water, its cliffs sheer, its floor narrow, a perfect choke point. For centuries, traders had avoided it. For decades, fighters had turned it into a killing ground. And tonight, Mason's team had orders to move through it. Hawk Mitchell lay belly down on a ridge overlooking the canyon mouth. Her scope swept across the jagged rocks, her instincts prickling. Every boulder looked like it could hide a rifle. Every shadow seemed too deep, too deliberate. "Overwatch in position," she whispered into comms. "No visible contacts, but I don't like it, feels wrong." Mason's reply came steady. "Copy, stay sharp, we push in 3 mics." The SEALs moved below, a dark line threading into the canyon floor. Their boots crunched on gravel, their weapons raised, every man knowing the odds weren't in their favor. Mitchell's finger rested near her trigger. Her breath slowed. She remembered her father's journal, one line underlined twice. "If it feels like a trap, it is." But orders were orders. The team advanced. The ambush came swift, violent, merciless. A wall of gunfire erupted from both ridges. Tracers sliced the air. RPGs slammed into rock, spraying shards like shrapnel. The canyon lit up in a storm of muzzle flashes. "Contact, contact both sides," Mason barked, his voice cutting through chaos. The SEALs scattered for cover, returning fire, but the canyon was a funnel and they were trapped inside it. From her ridge, Mitchell opened fire. The roared, each shot cracking like thunder, knocking fighters from their perches, but there were too many. Dozens, maybe more. "Overwatch, what do you see?" Mason demanded. 30+ combatants, she answered, calm despite the pounding in her chest. "At least 2 RPG teams. Heavy machine gun at the North Ridge. Firing now." Her round tore through the gunner's chest, the weapon clattering silent. But then movement, another figure on the opposite ridge. She swung her scope, not just any fighter, a sniper. Her pulse slowed. "Actual, be advised, enemy sniper, East Ridge, 800 meters, adjusting." "Neutralize," Mason ordered. She steadied her breath. The world shrank to the crosshairs, the wind, the angle. She squeezed. The cracked. The sniper folded backward, rifle tumbling from his hands. "One sniper down," she reported. "Copy, keep them off us." She fired again and again, her kill count rising. 14, 15, 16. The numbers blurred, but the rhythm held. Still the canyon boiled with fire. Fighters poured down the slopes, relentless, fearless. And then came the sound that froze her blood. The thump of mortars. The first shell landed short, shaking the canyon floor. Dust clouded, men ducked. The second struck closer, a Humvee shattering under the blast. Flames licked upward, black smoke billowing into the night. "Mortars, they've got range," shouted. Mitchell adjusted her scope, searching. Through the chaos, she caught the faint flash of a tube on the far ridge. "Overwatch to actual, mortar team spotted, engaging." She fired, 1 round, 2. The first tore through the loader's chest. The second shredded the tube. The bombardment faltered. But another flash appeared on the opposite slope. A second team. She pivoted, heart pounding, and fired again. Another fighter dropped. The tube tipped sideways. "Mortars neutralized," she reported, her voice tight. "Copy," Mason replied. "We're moving deeper. Cover our advance." The team pushed forward, bounding from cover to cover, prisoner in tow. Mitchell's rifle thundered overhead, clearing paths, breaking momentum, buying seconds. But she felt it in her bones. This wasn't random. The enemy wasn't just throwing men at them. They were trying to bleed them out, to pin them until no escape remained. She shifted positions, crawling along the ridge, finding a new angle. Her chest burned, her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. The canyon floor below was littered with bodies, smoke, burning metal. And still the enemy surged. Her kill count ticked higher, 21, 24, 27. And yet it wasn't enough. Inside the canyon, Mason led his men through the storm. His voice was iron, his commands sharp, but inside, unease churned. This wasn't just an ambush. It was orchestrated, coordinated, like someone had studied their tactics, anticipated their moves. And then it hit him, their prisoner. The man wasn't just bait, he was a lure, and Mason had walked his team straight into the jaws. "Overwatch, this is actual," he growled into comms. "I think they knew we'd come, they planned for you, watch yourself." Her reply came steady, "Always do, Master Chief." But he could hear something else beneath her calm. A weight, the knowledge that every round she fired was another soul added to her ledger. The enemy countersniper revealed himself just as dawn bled into the sky. Mitchell caught the faintest glint off glass, a shimmer of light betraying his position. He was good, very good, hidden in the rocks, perfectly camouflaged. Her chest tightened. She knew his kind, patient, deadly, a mirror of herself. She whispered into comms, "Actual sniper confirmed, Northwest Ridge, 1,200 meters, extreme elevation, I can take him." Mason's voice came back hard, "No risks, stay with the team." Her finger curled on the trigger. Her mind whispered her mother's words, "Sometimes the risk isn't the shot you take, it's the one you don't." She exhaled. The thundered. Through her scope she saw him fall, his rifle clattering across stone. "Sniper down," she reported. Her hands trembled as she reloaded, not from fear, from the growing realization that she was becoming what her mother had been, and maybe what had killed her. By the time the team broke free of canyon, the sun was high, the battle behind them. Smoke curled from craters. Bodies lay scattered across stone. The canyon had earned its name again. The SEALs trudged out, battered, dirty, exhausted. Their prisoner still alive, but barely. Mitchell descended from her ridge, across her back, dust coating her face and hair. She looked like she had aged years in a single night. Mason met her at the canyon mouth. For the first time, he didn't look at her like a skeptic. He looked at her like an equal. "You kept us alive," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I kept most of us alive." The weight of the canyon lingered. Every man carried it. Every shot still echoed. But for Mitchell, it was different. Because with every battle, every trigger pull, she wasn't just fighting the enemy. She was fighting herself. And she didn't know which war would break her first. Why did the air feel heavier than the sky itself? The mission had ended. The canyon was behind them. The base loomed like a safe harbor, its fences and spotlights rising from the dust. But as Hawk Mitchell stepped off the helicopter, slung across her back, boots grinding against the gravel, she didn't feel safe. Not anymore. The battlefield clung to her skin, burned into her eyes. The canyon's smoke, the cries of the dying, the endless recoil of her rifle. She had killed again, dozens too many. And each number pressed deeper into her chest, like weights tied to her ribs. Debriefing was mechanical. Asked his questions, Mason delivered his answers. The numbers were tallied. 29 confirmed kills for Mitchell this time. The room fell quiet when the count was read aloud. 56 in 2 missions. more than most snipers accumulated in an entire tour. "Exceptional work," said, his voice steady but his eyes searching her face. Mitchell didn't respond. She only nodded, her jaw set, her gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the walls. When the briefing ended, she didn't linger. She slipped out, her footsteps quick, her shoulders taut, vanishing into the night. She found herself at the armory, again. The lay across the table, stripped down, its steel guts gleaming under fluorescent light. She cleaned each piece with ritual precision. The rifle was no longer just a weapon. It was a mirror, one that reflected all the weight she carried. Her father's journal lay open. Her mother's ghost hovered in the silence. She whispered to the empty room, "How many before I break?" No answer came, only the echo of her own breath. She pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting the sting. She couldn't cry, not here, not now, not where walls had ears. But inside, something cracked. Mason found her hours later. He stepped into the armory quietly, the way men did when they weren't sure if they belonged. "You should be sleeping," he said. She didn't look up. "I don't sleep much anymore." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, studying her. "You saved us in that canyon, again." She set down the bolt, her fingers trembling before she steadied them. "At what cost?" He hesitated, then asked the question he had carried for days. "Do you regret it?" She finally looked at him, eyes raw, voice low. "I regret that it keeps getting easier." The honesty cut him, because he understood it too well. He moved closer, his voice softer. "Your mother used to say the same thing. After every mission. She'd sit in silence, same as you, cleaning her rifle like it could wash away the weight." Mitchell swallowed hard. "And what happened?" "She kept going," Mason said quietly, "until she couldn't anymore." The words hung between them, heavy, final. Mitchell looked back at "Then I don't want to be her." Mason's eyes softened, the weight of ghosts in them. "You don't have to be. You're not, and you get to choose how this story ends." Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but belief was a fragile thing in war. The weeks that followed blurred. Missions came and went. Each time she performed. Each time her rifle spoke louder than doubt. The team no longer questioned her. They moved with her, trusted her. But the silence inside her only grew. One night, after another mission ended in smoke and fire, approached her at the med bay. He'd been patching wounds, stitching men, carrying the weight in his own way. "You hold it all too close," he said gently. She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You carry their faces," he replied. "Every one of them, enemy or not. You can't save the world, Lieutenant. Sometimes you just save the man beside you. That has to be enough." She wanted to argue, but her throat wouldn't let her. Then came the mission that would end it all. Not the war, not the fight, but the story. A rescue op, a downed pilot stranded in hostile territory. Time was short, enemy fighters closing in. Mitchell took position high above the valley where the pilot was pinned. Mason led the team through jagged rocks, every step under fire. The fight was brutal, close, bloody. Mitchell's rifle cracked until her shoulder burned raw. Each shot bought seconds. Each kill cleared paths. But when the team reached the pilot, when extraction was almost in reach, the counterattack came. Waves of fighters, desperate, suicidal, throwing themselves into the fray. Mitchell fired until her last magazine ran dry. Then she drew her sidearm, shooting, covering, refusing to yield. Through her scope, she saw Mason dragging the pilot toward laying down cover fire. Wilson shouting, his rifle empty, swinging to reload. And then an enemy fighter broke through, rifle aimed squarely at Mason's back. Mitchell had no rounds left, no time, no options. Except one. She rose from cover, slung the empty aside and sprinted down the ridge. Her boots pounded stone, her lungs seared, her sidearm barked until it clicked empty. She slammed into the fighter before he could fire, the two of them crashing hard into the dirt. His knife flashed. Her hands locked against his wrist, muscles straining, heart pounding. The struggle was violent, desperate. He snarled, driving the blade closer. She fought with everything left, teeth gritted, the weight of ghosts behind her. And then Mason was there. His rifle cracked once, twice. The fighter went limp, collapsing beside her. She lay gasping, dust in her mouth, her arms trembling from the effort. Mason grabbed her by the vest, hauling her up. "Are you insane?" Her chest heaved, but her eyes steady, defiant, alive. "You said not to let history repeat," she rasped. "I wasn't going to." He stared at her. For a moment all he saw was fierce, unyielding, unforgettable. But then he looked closer, and he saw her own fire, her own choice. And he realized she wasn't her mother's shadow anymore. She was her mother's answer. The team made it out. The pilot lived. The mission succeeded. And in the quiet that followed, as the helicopter carried them back, Mitchell sat with the across her knees, her eyes closed, her breath steady. Not peaceful, not healed, but steady. Mason watched her, and for the first time he believed she might survive this war, not because of her record, not because of her skill, but because she had chosen not to be a ghost. Weeks later, when reviewed the reports, the numbers didn't matter. 56 kills, dozens more since, enough to etch her into legend. But for Mitchell, the numbers were no longer the point. She walked the base at dusk, the medal still hidden away, her father's journal tucked in her pack. The remained her weapon, but not her identity. She had learned something harder than shooting. That strength wasn't in the record or the rifle. It was in the choice to carry the weight and still walk forward. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't boast. It doesn't need to. Sometimes dignity simply acts.